Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad and these are the headlines. US President Donald Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for the COVID-19. In a tweet, President Trump said the couple is in quarantine and will get through this together. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 15 deaths overnight, taking the toll to nearly 6,500. Globally, the virus has claimed over 1 million lives while infecting more than 34.2 million people. The Taliban say the group and the US have agreed to adhere to and make efforts to implement the Doha Agreement. Taliban's spokesperson Mohammad Naeem says a Mullah Baradar Akhund-led delegation has met with US envoy Zalmay Khalilzad. Naeem said the two sides discussed the release of the prisoners and other issues including peace and intra-Afghan talks. The US, Israel and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to develop a joint strategy for greater coordination in the energy sector. In a statement, the energy ministers of the three countries said they will work to develop resources, technologies and related infrastructure. The agreement comes in the aftermath of the US-brokered UAE-Israel normalization deal, much to the anger of the Palestinians. The European Union has imposed sanctions on about 40 individuals it accused of rigging August presidential election in Belarus. In a press briefing, Council President Charles Michel said President Alexander Lukashenko is not on the current list, but the bloc will follow the situation. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. US President Donald Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for the COVID-19. Trump said the couple has entered quarantine and will get through this together. The virus is approaching 1 year mark after it was first detected in November 2019. More in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic has triggered unprecedented challenges as the global cases have surpassed 34 million mark. Researchers are racing to develop a vaccine, with World Health Organization tracking over 170 candidates worldwide. Many states are having tough time battling the pandemic, as many are bracing to face the second wave. The French government is set to put Paris on maximum COVID alert from next week. Health Minister Olivier Véran said the move will most likely lead to closure of restaurants and bars.
We've seen these limits on a series of coronavirus measures being breached in just the last few hours. We need to have confirmation in the coming days. If it is confirmed, we would have no choice but to classify Paris and the immediate suburbs as a maximum alert zone as early as Monday.
India's coronavirus death toll is nearing 100,000, a grim toll that ranks it only behind the US and Brazil. Meanwhile, new daily infections in Australia's hotspot state Victoria have fallen to a near fourth-month low.
There are 261 active cases of coronavirus in Victoria, with 7 new cases since my last update. One of those cases is linked to a known outbreak, 6 are under investigation and 1 case was reclassified. I'm sad to have to update you that there are now 802 Victorians who have passed away because of this global pandemic. That's 2 additional since yesterday's report.
South Korea has reported 63 more cases, posting a double-digit daily growth for the second day in a row. Health authorities remain vigilant against possible mass infections in the country during the Chuseok holiday this week.
In Pakistan, 15 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,499. The Health Ministry says 625 more people tested positive overnight, as 8,877 active cases remain in the country. The ministry said out of over 313,000 detected cases, 298,000 have recovered so far. It said more than 137,000 cases have been detected in Sindh province, while over 99,000 have been reported in Punjab so far. The National Command and Operations Centre says 735 hospitals are providing facilities to 720 patients admitted across the country. The Taliban say the group and the US have agreed to adhere to and make efforts to implement the Doha Agreement. Taliban spokesperson Mohammad Naeem says a Mullah Baradar Akhund-led delegation has met with US envoy Zalmay Khalilzad. Naeem said the two sides discussed the release of the prisoners and other issues, including peace and intra-Afghan talks. Meanwhile, Kabul has welcomed the European Parliament's call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Afghanistan. The US, Israel and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to develop a joint strategy for greater coordination in the energy sector. In a statement, the energy ministers of the three countries said they will work to develop energy resources, technologies and related infrastructure. The statement said the three countries will work on renewable energy, oil and gas and water purification technologies. It said the joint effort will undertake investment from the private institutions to leverage research and development capacities. The minister said they will also seek to provide solutions for the energy challenges faced by the Palestinian people. The agreement comes in the aftermath of the US-brokered UAE-Israel normalization deal, much to the anger of the Palestinians. Armenia has recalled its ambassador to Israel for consultations over alleged Israeli arms sales to Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, heavy shelling between Armenian and Azeri forces continues despite fresh calls from the world leaders for a ceasefire.
Armenian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Anna Nagdalian said Israel's work style is unacceptable. Israel's Foreign Ministry said it regrets Armenia's decision to withdraw its ambassador. Azerbaijan has acknowledged using Israeli-made weapons in its fighting with ethnic Armenian forces around Nagorno-Karabakh. Meanwhile, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan also accused Turkey of once again advancing on a genocidal path. He said Ankara's military is directly leading an offensive by Azeri forces against ethnic Armenian forces around the disputed region. Baku's defense ministry has claimed to have killed at least 2,300 Armenian soldiers in fresh clashes.
Greece and Turkey have established a military deconfliction mechanism following a series of technical talks in Brussels. In a statement, NATO said the mechanism includes the creation of a hotline between Athens and Ankara. It said the mechanism is designed to reduce the risk of incidents and accidents in the eastern Mediterranean. In a tweet, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg welcomed the agreement. He said the mechanism has been achieved following constructive engagement involving the two countries. Starting from the 10th of September, Turkish and the Greek military delegations held a series of technical talks. The talks were planned after a phone call between Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the NATO Secretary General. The European Union has imposed sanctions on about 40 individuals it accused of rigging August's presidential election in Belarus. In a press briefing, Council President Charles Michel said President Alexander Lukashenko is not on the current list. But Michel said the bloc will continue to follow the situation and can make changes to the list. The Council President said by imposing curbs, the EU has sent a clear message that it is credible. The sanctions include asset freezes and travel bans for those targeted. The measures against Belarusian officials were agreed back in August but had been held up by Cyprus. In Egypt, calls for an anti-government demonstration have been growing after a youth was fatally shot by security forces in the country's south. An Egyptian businessman, Muhammad Ali, has called for the rally in all the Egyptian squares, including the iconic Tahrir Square. Activists took to the social media to raise awareness for the protests, which have been named Friday of Victory. Earlier, Egyptian authorities issued a security alert to quell the upcoming protests. Since the 20th of September, the Egyptian public is taking to the streets across the country despite security crackdowns. State media has downplayed the protests as limited, while opposition outlets say they are breaking the fear barrier. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany has defended President Donald Trump's stand on white supremacy. During a heated White House press briefing, a reporter pressed McEnany for a definitive stance on white supremacism. In a response, she referenced statements made by Trump in recent days and in past years. The press secretary said Trump has denounced white supremacy, racism, and bigotry on many occasions. She added the president had advocated for the death penalty for a white supremacist. Trump has come under fire after deflecting an opportunity to condemn white supremacists during the recent presidential debate. Human rights lawyers have sued the Trump administration over sanctions on the employees of the International Criminal Court. A filing lodged at a court in New York names U.S. President Donald Trump, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and 7 other officials. It argues that Trump's executive order violates constitutional rights and hampers the plaintiffs' work in support of the international justice. In a statement, Open Society Justice Initiative Executive Director James Goldston said the order betrayed Washington's support for international justice. He said they are going to court to end this reckless assault on a judicial institution and the victims it serves. In June, Trump authorized sanctions against employees of the ICC, citing its involvement in a probe into whether American forces committed war crimes in Afghanistan. Canada has announced a $7.5 billion infrastructure plan in a bid to recover from the economic slump caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said with smart and targeted investments, government will help create jobs and grow the economy. Trudeau said his government was committed to building a healthy, sustainable future for everyone. He said the plan will bring back more than 1 million jobs lost during the COVID-19 crisis. Trudeau said Canada Infrastructure Bank will provide the money from its $26 billion fund set up in 2017. The Canadian Prime Minister said 3-year growth plan will invest in clean power, domestic infrastructure, and agriculture.
3-year growth plan will invest in everything from clean power, zero-emission buses and home retrofits to broadband and irrigation infrastructure for farmers. This is a win-win. With smart, targeted investments, we can get people back on the job and grow the economy while building a healthy, sustainable future for everyone.
CIB Chairman Michael Sabia said the bank will aim to invest and reinvest the pledged funds to keep on building the infrastructure required for sustained growth. Now moving on to India, where the police have ruled out the possibility of rape in the case of a 19-year-old Dalit woman. The alleged rape and death of a woman from the lowest rung of the country's caste system sparked countrywide protests in India. In a statement, a senior Uttar Pradesh police official, Prashant Kumar, said the forensic report revealed the woman was not raped. The official said the post-mortem report indicates that the woman died due to trauma following an injury to the neck. Earlier, local police said the victim was raped and strangled in the field near her home in Hathras. Meanwhile, the family of the victim says police forced them to cremate the body without completing autopsy and medico-legal procedures. Pakistan has launched a series of development projects to uplift living standards in its southwestern province of Balochistan. Let's know about the efforts and the progress in this report. Now moving on, China's tourism is set to soar as the country's scenic spots are bracing massive tourist arrivals during the National Day holidays. More about the festivities in this report.
China has begun its 8-day holiday for both the National Day and Mid-Autumn Festival. The Mid-Autumn Festival is a harvest festival in traditional Chinese culture. The festival falls on the 15th day of the 8th month of the Chinese lunar calendar with full moon at night. In an ancient village of East China's Anhui province, the villagers are airing out chilies, corns and other crops, forming various characters and pictures to show their best wishes to the country. The breathtaking natural scenery in Shisui city of China's Guizhou province also attracted large numbers of tourists to appreciate the autumn beauty. For the 8-day holiday, the scenic spot also rolled out a series of epidemic prevention and control measures to ensure the safety of tourists. In Shaanxi city of central China's Henan province, 9 performers presented molten iron splashing performance to the visitors. It created a fascinating firework-like display to extend wishes for good harvest and to celebrate the National Day and the Mid-Autumn Festival.
In Argentina, poverty and economic woes are growing large, and the pandemic has worsened the long-standing crisis. Analysts observe Argentina's economy has contracted a record 19.1%, while nearly half of its population has been dragged into poverty. More in this report.
The Great Depression and the pandemic fallout have affected nearly half of Argentina's population. 3.5 million people have lost their jobs during the lockdown to stem the spread of the outbreak. According to official statistics, 35.5% of Argentines were living in the poverty in the second half of the last year. The Catholic University of Argentina estimates this year poverty rate has spiked 47% at the end of June.
The impact has been on the productive structure, on the structure of job creation, on the self-employed, even on the informal worker. There is greater general poverty. We are all a little poorer. We already were last year, and now with greater inequality.
The numbers reflect an everyday reality for Argentines. Small production companies have been hit hard as the activity came to halt. Unemployment has dived up to 13.1%. Analysts say a wider work plan is needed to cope with the situation.
Get out of this poverty crisis requires a lot of imagination on the part of those in charge. Traditional programs of a few public works and a slight improvement in wages will not be enough. But a wide work plan would need to be deployed, building a strong foundation in the popular and social economy in small to medium companies.
Argentina has recently struck a deal with its creditors to restructure about $65 billion foreign debt.
Pakistan has launched a series of development projects to uplift living standards in its southwestern province of Balochistan. Let's know about the efforts and the progress in this report.
The recent development projects in Balochistan express government's firm resolve to end poverty and promote health and education in the province. Government has launched several projects worth $550 million, reaching people living in all remote areas. Avaran is one of those districts where health, education and employment provision for locals is government's top priority.
We are trying our best in providing every possible medical facility here at the district headquarters hospital. All major examinations and tests are being conducted too, but government is requested to take more measures to upgrade this hospital for even better reach out to masses.
Socio-economic development for the people of Balochistan is multi-dimensional, but locals say education holds a key to the province's bright future.
I'm a teacher here at a school being run by Frontier Corps. Let me tell you that children of this district are very enthusiastic when it comes to learning and getting educated. Not just children, but their parents also want them to be in school, but more and more educational institutes are required in this regard.
Vocational training centers for local women and young girls have also been set up by armed forces.
My message for the girls across Balochistan is to come forward, educate themselves and create their own identity.
It's been a year that I'm coming here at Vocational Center and I've learned a lot. It's an interesting activity to undertake along with education. I finished high school level studies and will keep this journey to go on.
Government says the objective behind this drive is to support Balochistan in eliminating the negative impact of economic deprivation amid COVID-19. The most encouraging factor of the education for youth and basic primary level kids was that we found out that the current regime of Balochistan government and the armed forces is not only giving them basic education, but also they are getting them skilled so they can excel in other walks of life as well. Reporting for Indus News, Sumaira Khan, Balochistan, Awaran.
The European Union says it will keep negotiating with Britain over a trade deal until the bitter end. In a press conference, European Parliament President David Sassoli said he felt dismayed after London moved to undermine its Brexit divorce deal with the bloc. He said Britain must respect previous agreements, while London said it is working hard to secure a deal. Earlier, the UK said trade talks between London and Brussels have been conducted in a constructive spirit. Pressure is mounting on the two sides to seal a deal to avoid putting an estimated €1 trillion of annual trade at risk.
This is a historic moment, and they realize the consequences if at the end of the year there is no possibility of a deal. To have an agreement, they have to also respect previous agreements, otherwise we can't make any progress.
The US has fined Emirates Airlines $400,000 for operating flights in prohibited parts of Iranian airspace in 2019. In a statement, the US Transportation Department said the flight was carrying the JetBlue Airways code and was subject to their regulations. The Federal Aviation Administration said Emirates operated flights over the parts of Iranian airspace for 19 days in July 2019. The fine was imposed as the US had barred flights due to heightened military activities and increased tensions between the two countries. And now the weather situation from around the globe. That's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.